Who was your number one candidate right off the bat, KJ Wright?
If I'm introducing the next head coach of this football team, and I'm John Snyder, I would like to introduce our new head coach, Dan Quinn. Give me DQ.
Why?
Give me DQ, Brock. I see your face right now. I don't know why Brock's looking.
No. I had a cough in me, and I was thinking blizzards. I was thinking DQ. I was like, man, I like my Reese's peanut butter cup blizzard. That's
Throw
pretty
the banana
good.
in there.
Guys, come on,
Throw the banana in there. Trust me.
Yep. Okay.
Dan Quinn. I heard what John Snyder said. He wants to bring in someone with a similar mindset. Let's keep this culture similar. Dan Quinn put together a top 5 defense this past year. Dan Quinn knows how to bring out the best in guys. Dan Quinn, he's amazing. The players love him. The players respect him. He's going to build the proper staff. I trust him to build an offensive team that could put up points because you got a Kyle Shanahan, you got a Sean McVay that you got to compete with in this division. And so I trust him to do just that. And he's familiar. He's really, really familiar. And I completely trust him. And Dan Quinn, I trust.
We started about a half hour ago, and I just can't get your initial thought out of my mind. When I asked you why, and you said protect the team. Rule number 1. And throughout the rest of this last half hour and all the conversations and thinking about the culture in that place, to me, isn't that just the essence of it? You know, I remember talking to somebody that has worked at a few different organizations, and he said, man, the difference about the Seahawks is everything. With everybody on any level of administration, ticket sales, marketing, communication, they all had the same goal. It was protecting the team. And it was about obviously winning. Like, we're going to do all we can to protect these players, to make sure we go about our job so they can go on the field and they can produce and they can win. We got to protect this team. Can you do that with the same cast of characters? Dan Quinn comes in here. So I guess I ask you, KJ, was it more about some of the cast of characters, not individually protecting the team, or was it just simply 14 years of that messaging coming from one guy, just simply tired?
Combination of both. Combination of both. There were some individuals on this football team that didn't hold up their end of the bargain. They did not hold up their end of the bargain. It was crystal clear when you saw the antics that they did. And we heard this years ago. With some of my teammates about the message. I've heard this, I've heard that.
Kumbaya meetings.
Yeah. We've heard it even 5-6 years ago.
Yep.
And so you fast forward to 2023. I'm sure that kind of resonated with the guys. I'm sure they're like, oh, here we go with the OTA message, with the primetime football message. I'm sure that they would know what was coming before it even came.
Okay, so talk to me then about Dan Quinn. He was your D coordinator. He did lead those defensive staff meetings. He was there when this thing was at the mountaintop. Tell me, as a leader of men, right, just a leader, and tell me as a guy that's going to hold that virtue and that culture of protecting the team, how does he do that following in the footsteps of Pete?
He does it face to face. He does it head on. He does it with love. He does it with intensity, and he just simply brings out the best in every guy. I can speak for a defensive meeting room. We were number 1 in the league for 4 years in a row. And so you tell me he's going to take that same mentality and spread it amongst the special teams, spread it amongst the offense. He went to Atlanta. He learned something. He learned the hard way. He did some good stuff. He also learned, come back, be a defensive coordinator. And so you take all that time. It's been 7 years since he's left here. Come find yourself and do it here in Seattle.
It's interesting. Of all the coaching candidates, there are only really 2 that seem to be very polarized. Harbaugh is the most polarizing. And we'll come back and talk about Jim here. Harbarf, as one of our texters keeps calling him, which makes me laugh every time. Harbarf. But Jim is very polarizing because of the success, but also the rivalry and all that. Dan Quinn, I think, has probably, of everyone we've mentioned, received the most amount of kind of negative feedback from fans, and it's people saying, yeah, I don't want to hire somebody because they're familiar. I don't want somebody who's from the same tree, and I want something different. I want to move in a new direction. When you think about Dan Quinn, what was it like when he left? You were here when he was here and all the success you guys had. How did things change when Dan left?
Not too much. not too much. The essence of
I think that's maybe challenging for some people, that it didn't change that much, right? Like that he was just part of the process here in Seattle. I think that's the fear.
That's deep. I never. That's really, really deep.
Yeah, we're going next level.
And if you, let's be honest, if you look at it, he's going to. I think, I don't know for sure, but it's going to be very similar. It's going to be very similar. And so the question is, do we hit the reset button? Listening to John Schneider speak, I don't think we necessarily want to do that as an organization.
Do you know Raheem Morris at all?
I don't.
Okay. He's another one of the names on this list who is probably most similar, wouldn't you say, Brock, to Dan Quinn, of anybody else? They're both on the defensive side of the ball. They were both together, right, at some point?
They were head coaches, had opportunities to be head coaches.
It's been a little while for both of them. It's been almost a decade now for Raheem Morris since he did it in Tampa, but both guys have sort of had that opportunity to reflect on how it went for them in their first stint. And when you ask people about Morris, that's sort of the one thing you hear is leader of people. Yeah. That he is a guy who relates really well to the players, but also really is an excellent leader.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at the rest of the teams that's in the playoffs right now, you have who? Kyle Shanahan. You have a John Harbaugh. You have a DeMeco Ryan.
Yep.
You had
Dan Campbell.
Come on. Hey, so what are we talking about here?
Do you like the whole ex-player thing?
Are we talking X's and O's when we speak about DeMeco Ryans or Dan Campbell?
I mean, it's funny you say that because DeMeco Ryans and Dan Campbell led Albert Breer on our air yesterday to say this.
I say Vrabel, like, if you want to look at, like, what DeMeco has done in Houston, what Vrabel himself did over his first couple of years in Tennessee, and then what Dan Campbell has done in Detroit, that's sort of be what you were about.
I mean, he's putting Vrabel in the same camp as DeMeco Ryans and Dan Campbell.
Yeah, and you asked me, do I buy into the whole former player thing? Who better to lead a team than someone that lived their life? Like, I literally lived what you're going through. I understand the pressure. I understand the anxiety. I understand how to take care of my body. Who else better to lead a team than someone?
Sounds like you're talking about Jim Harbaugh or Mike Vrabel then.
Yeah, because Ryan DeWitt on Twitter is saying, please, no more KJ with all this blank Quinn as head coach. Make it stop.
Look,
tell KJ to stop. If you want to keep the culture, then why fire Pete? What are we even doing here, KJ? And when I just put out and multitasked.
Can you help explain? This is, I think, Brock's bringing up the question, though. Is Dan Quinn Pete Carroll light? I think that's the question many people have. You've been around both guys. Is bringing in Dan Quinn the same as just going Pete Carroll light?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I'm trying to think in a way, but he's his own man. He's his own individual. But it will be similar, yes. And Brock, I'm a big Jim Harbaugh fan. I'm a very big Jim Harbaugh fan. Where anywhere he goes, the man finds a way to win. Point blank. Period.
What was it like playing against his teams?
It was challenging. It was a clash of two gladiators.
Can I just pause you for just a second? Because I did multitask. I can rarely do this. I can never do it when it's just Salk and I. But, KJ with the KJ Wright show, I'm able to kind of multitask on the side here. Just put out a very simple tweet, 12s. Do you want Dan Quinn as the next head coach of your Seattle Seahawks? What do you think the voting is amongst the populace out there right now, KJ?
80% to 20, no.
Yep. 88% no. Then why don't we just have that here? We just had that. And that culture, unfortunately, has seen players run over. And players today, do you think players today, KJ, are different than players were 14 years ago?
Yeah.
How so?
I say this all the time. This group of young men, not everyone, but this group of young men, a lot of these guys are distracted. A lot of these guys, when they go home, they're playing Call of Duty for 3 hours. They're doing TikTok dances. It's a different breed of young men that's coming to this organization. They're smoking cigars when we're going home.
My wife had that point. That was what we said last week. Heather and I were talking about this after Pete and Bill and all those guys, kind of were done within a day or two of each other. And she said, it's crazy. I mean, Bill was such a, boomer style coach.
Belichick.
Yeah. Pete is such a millennial style coach with the empowerment of everybody else. But maybe it was Gen Z that finally did him in. That, as good as he was for the boomers, Gen Z, or as good as he was rather for the millennials, eventually the Gen Z guys maybe did him in.
Yeah, no, they did. They did him dirty. A lot of these guys did him dirty. And a lot of these guys need to look themselves in the mirror and say, I failed my coach. And so the next guy that comes in, I'm really intrigued to see who you guys think. I'm looking at you. You would love a
Jim Harbaugh is my number one guy. I mean, my
not
number
opposed
one
to
is
that.
Jim
I'm
Harbaugh.
not
Right
opposed to
now, Mike Vrabel is my number two. And after that, Brock's got me intrigued a little bit by Lincoln Riley. And I think that, everyone seems to be invested in Ben Johnson. That sounds cool to me, too. It's hard for me with all these coordinators to know whether or not they have that thing that you said, that leadership, that ability to change a culture and build around them. Maybe that's Bobby Slowick, but I don't know him from a hole in the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's, what's the guy from Frank Smith from Miami, but I don't know him from a hole in the wall. Maybe that's the defensive coordinator in Carolina, Ed Giro, but I don't know those guys and whether or not they can do it. I know Jim Harbaugh can do it.
Yes, I do
believe Mike Vrabel can do it because I've seen it happen.
Yes.
I think actually Raheem Morris can do it. He's on my list for that reason.
So with what you just said, let's just start with Jim Harbaugh. Right now, we understand that John Schneider is in full control of this football team. Do you think that a Jim Harbaugh will come into this organization and not want to have some input on a trade or a free agent or a draft pick?
I think that he would want. I think he would want that. But let's say for a moment they could work that out. Let's say they could work that out.
Okay.
Would Jim Harbaugh rise to the top of your list?
Let's say they could work that out.
Yeah.
1,000,000%. Absolutely. His offensive mind, the way he runs the football, he ran for 400 yards. It seemed like each and every Saturday in college football. Yes. And you know that his coaching staff, I just heard this through the grapevines, but his coaching staff adores him. His coaching staff loves him. You saw that man crying, the offensive coordinator after they won the game.
Moore, yeah.
This is for you, Jim. Like, these guys love and respect Jim Harbaugh.
Yep.
And so I am personally surprised that we haven't seen via Twitter that we've interviewed Harbaugh.